Welcome to Nowhere, Chapter 18. I thought it would be a relief without Baba's heavy, stern presence in the caravan. But in the first few days after he'd gone, I realised how much he'd done. It was up to me now to deal with the camp authorities, queue for everything on distribution days, make sure Fuad got to school on time, and worry about Ma and Iman if they were out of the caravan on their own. I knew I couldn't rely on Musa. He was trapped inside by the violent gangs of children as much as Iman was. And anyway, Baba's anger and cruel words had made him almost ill. Winter was really on us now. Some mornings there was a layer of ice in the puddles, and the stony ground outside the caravan glittered with frost. I felt weighed down by my new responsibilities. I wanted Ma to tell me what to do, but she seemed to expect me to know. In any case, she was fretting over Nadia, who was unwell again. Look, she kept saying to Iman, see how tired she is? So pale and hardly eating. Feel her little hands, they're blocks of ice. It wasn't only our family I had to support. I'd almost forgotten my promise to Riyadh. But the day after Baba left, I came out of the caravan to find him standing waiting for me, his gang in a threatening bunch behind him. Later, I said, resisting the temptation to turn around and go back inside. I've got to get forward to school. Riyadh crossed his arms and the other kids took a step closer. Not later, said Riyadh. Now, our food's run out. I may be a stupid, ignorant lump, but I can think like a prize-winning rocket scientist when I have to. All right, I said, and pointed to the two biggest boys in Riyadh's group. You and you, come here. What are your names? No, I don't want to know. I'm calling you Tiger and Eagle. The boys looked at each other and I saw the biggest one mouthed Tiger experimentally. Musa, can you come out? I called over my shoulder. Have you got time to take Fuad to school today? Musa appeared at the door of the caravan. He took in the scene with one sweep of his eyes. I suppose so, he said casually. He was scared stiff, but nothing would have made him show it in front of the kids who tormented him ever since we'd arrived in the camp. I hauled Tiger and Eagle forward and made them stand in front of Musa. These two are your protection, I said to Musa, ignoring the shocked glances of the boys. Any trouble from them, any hint of disrespect, a single word out of place, and I'll personally deal with them. It won't be pleasant. It might not have worked. For a long moment I was afraid it hadn't. Tiger smirked. Eagle waggled his head mockingly. Then Riyadh said sharply, You heard my cousin. Musa and Fuad are family now. I bit my lip as I watched Musa limp off with Fuad holding tightly to his hand. What I had left my brothers in for. I didn't have time to worry. The other boys were crowding round me. What's my name? Said the little guy, whose bare feet blue with cold were curled away from the icy ground. You look pretty dangerous to me. Scorpion. And me? And me? And me? Wolf, lion, and, antelope. I don't like antelope. Cobra then. Happy now? Happy all you animals? Don't call us animals, objected Wolf. All right then, I scratched my head. Tell you what, from now on, you're the hooligans, okay? Yay, we're the hooligans, little Cobra shouted. The hooligans are the best. Riyadh batted them away. Omar, my ma. Okay, let's go. And that was how, without me ever meaning to, I became the big daddy of the hooligans, a bunch of fatherless brats. It was a cold winter, cold and mean and hungry. New people were arriving from Syria every day, pouring off buses and trucks from the border, only a few kilometres away. The camp was growing further and further out across the desert. New caravan cabins arriving every hour. They were stretching in lines kilometres long into the distance. Most people in the camp seemed to be bored to death, but I was busy all day long. This may sound wicked, and perhaps it is, but to be honest, after the first week without Baba, I didn't miss him too much. Every now and then, a text would come to Ma, so we knew he was all right. I stopped thinking about him. I was getting used to taking decisions and sorting things out on my own. I would have got a bit cocky, I suppose, if it hadn't been for Musa. I don't know how he did it, but after the first day he had the hooligans under his thumb. The daily walk to take Fuad to school soon involved all of them, while Riyadh followed me around like a faithful dog. The kids quickly learned to understand Moose's mangled speech, and he started to tell them stories using the silly names I'd given them. They hung around him and begged him for more. I was a bit put out, actually. I was the one who tamed them. And who was getting the benefit? Mr. Charming, of course. Not that I really minded. With his protection in place, Musa was free at last to go out. Ma even let Iman go with him sometimes. She loved going to school, talking to the teachers and watching them in class. The children were hard to control. Some had never been to school before, and all of them had been off classes for months. They'd seen awful things too, and were really naughty all the time. What with Baba going and me having to sort out Riyadh's lost ration card, as well as the extra fetching and carrying I had to do, it was 5 whole days before I had time to go back to the Champs-Élysées to see Abu Radwan. And he wasn't at all pleased to see me. He looked up briefly, recognised me, then went on studying the wires he was untangling on his counter. "Where have you been? Thought we'd a deal. I sold all the batteries I got for you." My heart sank with a thump. "Oh, please, Abu Radwan, I couldn't come. My Baba, well, there was a riot home and back to Syria." That shook him. He looked up at me at last. "He did what?" "He went back to Dara. He worked for the government." "So I've heard," Abu Radwan said dryly. "He said he was going to try to clear his name." I stopped, aware that I was saying far too much. Abu Radwan said nothing. "And there's this kid," I went on desperately. "His dad's dead, and his mum's on her own. She lost her ration card. I had to help her get a new one." "Did you now?" "I've got to do stuff for my mum. My oldest sister helps her in the caravan, with my little sister who's not very well, but she can't go out, and my older brother can't do much either. He's disabled." "Any more excuses, or have you run out?" I felt my cheeks flame with indignation. "They're not excuses. I'm telling you the truth." He smiled at last. "Calm down, Omar. Stop snarling at me like an angry dog. I believe you." He reached under the counter and pulled out a box of batteries. "I did sell the ones I bought for you, but I got another box in just in case. So, are you going to go out there and get selling?" My sigh of relief practically blew a bunch of papers off his counter. I reached out to take the box. He snatched it back. "Hey, not so fast. We haven't sorted out the deal yet." I was lucky with Abu Radwan. He gave me a really good deal. I felt like the conqueror of the world as I pranced back to our caravan with my box of batteries tucked into my bag. I'd been right about the demand too. My first round of batteries melted out of my hands like frost under the midday sun. I pressed the profits into Ma's hands with the casual, "Got something here for you, Ma." My grin was so wide I thought it would crack my cheeks. "Where'd you get this money from?" she asked, looking up with a suspicious frown. "Earned it, didn't I?" I said proudly. "Got my own business now." And it was great, because once I'd explained, she was so pleased with me her eyes actually filled with tears. "You're a wonderful son, Omar. A gift from Allah." Then she spoiled it by adding with a sigh, "What have we come to when my boy is nothing but a street hawker? You should be in school." Iman saw the look in my face and said quickly, "One day he will be, Ma. Look, we can get some fresh vegetables. Maybe even a few apples. You're a marvel, Omar. You really are." I'll show her, I thought, as I strode back to the Champs-Élysées for another box of batteries. I don't need school any more. For 2 or 3 weeks I was a king of batteries round our part of the camp. The hooligans were doing their job just fine, keeping an eye out for me and making sure I was okay. They started melting away after a while, but I'd got confident by then, and I reckoned I'd things sorted. It was a freezing Monday morning when the good times ended. I was doing my usual rounds, going between the caravans calling out, "Battery, battery, buy 5 get 1 free," when I heard what for a second I took to be an echo. "Battery, battery." I looked round shocked. This was no echo, this was a threat. I marched round the corner. Mustafa, the snotty kid from the rival gang, the one who tried to beat Riyadh to a pulp, was in the very act of selling 2 batteries to one of my regular customers. I let out a roar and charged. He dodged out of my way and yelled, "Come and get me, cousin Omar." Then he disappeared between 2 caravans. The woman who'd bought his batteries wagged her finger at me. "No need for fighting. You don't own the place, you know." And where were the hooligans all this time? Where was my protection? I'll tell you where. My precious brother Musa. aided and abetted by my treacherous sister Iman, had started to lure them off to school. One by one, they'd persuade the little monsters to get themselves enrolled. Instead of protecting my business, they were either sitting in the classroom chanting, "What is your name? My name is Ali Maher Ahmed," in appalling English, or hanging round Musa, begging him to tell them another stupid story. I sold less than half my usual quota of batteries that morning, and by the time I went back to the Champs-Elysees for refill, my feet were sore with the furious kickings I'd given the stones along the way. To make matters worse, Abu Radwan only laughed when I told him what had happened. "Stop scowling, Omar," he said. "That's just business. And no, before you ask, it wasn't me who sold him his batteries. What you've got to do is have another bright idea." I gasped at him, my mind whirring round like an electric fan. "SIM cards?" I said wildly. "Torches?" Abu Radwan didn't answer. He was looking at me thoughtfully. "I have a better idea," he said at last. "Come back later this afternoon. I may have something for you." And that was how I moved up in the world, from being a street hawker, flogging batteries from a cardboard box, to being a sort of trainee electrician. Abu Radwan gave me a chance any boy in the camp would have jumped at, but I had to work hard for it. He had me running around like a sheepdog at first, taking equipment out to people, setting up generators or tapping into the power lines, delivering orders when he'd managed to get items into the camp, and then running the stall whenever he went off. I worried at first about how Ma would manage without me, but it was more or less all right. It was just as well that Musa and Iman had the hooligans to rely on. In the mornings, they went out in a gaggle with Musa and Iman to get their family supplies from the distribution centre, and Musa helped them to sort out the muddles when the camp administrators got things wrong. None of us needed quite so much protection now anyway. As the winter ground on, Jordanian policemen were beginning to show up around the camp. Hundreds of people were still pouring in from Syria every day, but things weren't as wild as they'd been at first. The gangs of kids and half-crazed teenagers were slowly being brought under control. Being an electrician is really fiddly work. You have to be careful and neat, because if you get things wrong you can cause blowouts and breakdowns and even give yourself a horrible shock. At first, when I was at the back of the shop trying to remember Abu Radwan's instructions for mending a broken heater or fixing a light fitting, I had to concentrate totally. But after a while I started to take part in the conversations that were always going on at the counter. People usually talked about Syria, of course, and the news was always bad. I hated hearing it. The thing I worried about most was hearing Baba's name and finding out that something awful had happened to him. "We thought it'd all be over in a month or two," I heard a man say. "It'll be another year at least, I reckon." 2 years, said another. 2? 5, someone else chipped in. "Let's face it, we're not going back to Syria, not soon, and maybe not ever. I'd get my family out to Europe if I had the money. I've got a cousin in Germany. There are jobs there. There's nothing for us here. Nothing." It was the mention of Europe that made me prick up my ears. Europe meant Norway to me, and Norway meant Rasul. But Rasul hadn't texted me for months. He still sent messages to Ma from time to time. The last one had said, "Got a job in a cafe in Oslo. Prices here so high you wouldn't believe it. Say hello to the kids." There'd be no message for me, no mention of a shop. I'd been mending a switch in the heater, but my hand stopped working as for the first time I faced up to a reality that I'd known in my heart for a long time. My dream of opening a shop with Rasul was just that. A dream. It was never going to happen. He's only been kind to me when he said all that stuff to me in Basra, I told myself. Why would he want to be saddled with a kid like me? I can't even speak English, never mind Norwegish, or whatever they call their language. I tried to keep my dream alive, but now I had to let it go. I went back to sorting out that stupid switch, but my eyes were blurred with tears, and I did it all wrong. Back in the caravan, the gloomy talk was just as bad. While Baba had been around, we'd kept our thoughts to ourselves. But now he was gone, Iman and Musa moaned all the time. Iman was spending longer and longer at the school after she dropped Fuad off, helping with whatever the teachers would let her do. "Another kid dropped out of school today," she told Ma one evening, as we sat around our supper. It was lamb stew with carrots, bought, I'm proud to say, with my wages from Abu Radwan. "What a shame," Ma said absently. She was trying to spoon another mouthful into Nadia, who had closed her lips tight and turned her head away. "Do you mean Maher?" asked Ford. I didn't like him anyway. "Don't talk with your mouth full," said Ma automatically. "The family managed to get out of the camp. They're going to live on the farm," said Iman enviously. "All very well for ones with a father to look after them," Ma said bitterly. "They can earn money. That's why they're gone." Iman went on. "They're sending the kids to work in the fields." I felt Ford stiffen beside me and looked down to see the anxious look on his face. "At starvation wages," scoffed Musa. "It's illegal anyway. If the Jordanians catch them, they'll send them back to Syria." Iman shrugged. "So what? Anything's better than living in limbo here. What have we got to look forward to? Nothing. There's no school for Musa and me. No work." "Hey," I objected. Iman dismissed me with a wave of her hand. "You've been lucky." "Lucky?" I nearly choked in a mouthful of stew. "Lucky? So it's just luck that made me think of batteries, and luck when I impressed Abu Radwan so much he gave me a job." "Shut up, Omar," growled Musa. "Go on, Iman." Iman sighed. "I just feel hopeless, that's all. We're in a sort of prison. We're nowhere. We might be here forever." Her voice shook and she turned her head away. "You'd better keep on working then, Omar," Musa said, trying to lighten the mood. "Earn enough for us to get a smuggler to take us all to Europe." Ma never knew when Musa was joking. "Don't be silly, Habibi. It would cost thousands and thousands to get us to Europe. You want us all to drown in the sea? Suffocate in the back of a lorry? Anyway, there's no need for that. Your Baba will be back soon. He'll know what to do for the best." Musa and I looked at each other. He's not being silly, I thought. He really is thinking about Europe. My dream of working in Norway with Rasul had been one thing, but the thought of our whole family going to Europe was cold and scary. Good thing it can't happen, I told myself with a shudder, and pushed Fuad out of the way to help myself to another spoonful of lamb stew.